Hi, today we are going to discuss about AEM OSGI configuration. In case of our AEM project needs any input as a variable or as a constant values with when our project is in running mode or it is already running at the production level, any input that is required to our project, if that kind of input we wanted to get at our Java level or anywhere we wanted to use, then for that purpose we always rely on something called OSGI configuration. So to to specify with an example, let's take an example. Usually, if we are using any kind of a third-party API, so as part of the third-party API, we always get some kind of a API key access token. If anyone might come across something called Google Map or Google Service Console related APIs, so we always require to have a Google access token and Google API key. So those kind of information we have to get from the Google developer console, and that has to be used at our project level. However, there might be some scenario whenever we change our uh, vendor from one vendor to another vendor, we might have to change the API key, and there are some certain scenario even the API key might be regenerated again after 6 months or after 1 year. So based on this kind of scenario, we cannot uh, we cannot afford a deployment every time just to update an API key, and this could happen at any point of time. So in these scenarios, we always rely on something called OSGI configuration. There is one more example related to scheduler expression. This is majorly widely used as part of the AEM, where we can give a scheduler expression for any kind of service to be run at a certain period of time or a certain point of time, and that scheduler expression can be changed by going to the OSGI console. Okay. There is one more application. It is part of interview questions. Usually, it comes as a AEM interview question, like why we always rely on OSGI configuration for kind of payment URL. So whenever we have a project with the payment service, right? In dev URL, we have to provide a dev payment gateway, and in stage URL we might have to provide stage payment gateway. However, in production, the payment gateway will be the production URL of a third party payment gateway. So in those cases, we need to rely on the run mode of the environment server, and to get the run mode of the environment server also, we always rely on OSGI configuration to accept a reliable configuration policy or configuration input from the OSGI configuration. So to visit the web console, you can type localhost 4502 system console bundles, which will where you can go to the web console. Once you come here, you click on the OSGI and you click on the configuration. In this way, you can travel to the OSGI configuration, and here you can search the by default when we run our AEM server. There are some configuration already be available. You see there are a lot of already out of the box configuration. One of the most popular configuration, if anyone asks as part of the AEM interview question, you can tell log support, sling log. Yeah. So there is something called Apache Sling Logging Logger configuration, and if you see here, we all by default there will be a lot of log will be created, and as part of this only we are able to generate the error.log file as part of our CRXT. So now the way there is already out of the box configuration, we wanted to create a configuration custom configuration for our project level. Okay. And once we open any, let me open any configuration to see how does it look like. So if I open a configuration, right, it will open a small window with some input field we should be able to enter. Okay, this is one of the configuration JCR resource access gate, where we have to provide the path information, deep check prefix, JCR node path. So these are the three input it is accessing. And if you see, these are the PID or the so whenever we are creating a configuration, it will create a PID on the class name, whatever the configuration class we have taken. Based on that, and based on that, we should be able to access whatever the information we can provide here. If you see, I can edit these, so I can give any of the configuration information here, and we should be able to access this particular information at our Java class or any of the servlet or the Sling model class. I'll cancel this. Now we'll go and we'll create one configuration. So this is the OSGI configuration documentation. So I'm currently looking at the OSGI configuration 7.00 documentation, and as far by referring to this configuration, we are going to create the configuration. I have actually already created the configuration to save the time. Otherwise, the video could have been much longer. So to create a OSGI configuration, first we have to create something called a OCD. OCD in the sense object class definition. Okay, we have to create a at and interface, which is kind of a OCD, and usually at interface is used to create an annotation, and this is kind of creating an annotation only. Okay, so what we are going to create? So we are going to create an at interface annotated at interface class. Okay, and this particular class should contain these attribute. If you see attribute definition, okay, remember this is not exactly class, even though I'm referring as a class as per Java. This is not a exactly class, because if you see, the keyword is not class, the keyword is at interface. Okay, and this has to be annotated with an annotation called at object class definition, and all of these annotation behavior, everything comes from the OSGI package, org.osgi package. Okay, and these are as part of the service, OSGI service. Meta type in the sense, these are kind of the meta information, uh, class related, meta information behavior related annotation. Okay, so there are two important annotation you have to remember. One is at object class definition, another is attribute definition. At object class definition, you have to put at the this at interface level, so that this particular whatever the configuration we are creating, where we can provide a title, kind of a name and description. Okay, where it will come. So I have already built this configuration so that I can show you how does this appear. Okay, huh. So if you see this, right, project OSGI configuration, the way there is a title, similarly we will see. Let's see our OSGI configuration. I have already built our service, so I think this is our project OSGI configuration. If you see, this is the title. Okay, this is the name whatever we have provided here. Project OSGI configuration. Once you create this particular OSGI configuration, that will come and sit here. And if you see, this is our class or at interface path. Okay, com.adobe.aem.guides.weekend.core.services.project configuration, and it's the same. But there is some difference. See, here it is written project configuration, rather than here it is the at interface annotation is actually a project config details. I have taken intentionally a different name so that we can identify, because this is a at interface annotated class. However, this is not going to kind of a, this cannot be a service to, as part of available as part of the configuration, it has to be a OSGI service configuration, where we have created another class which will act like a OSGI configuration, which has to be annotated with at component, then only that will be available here. Okay, that will be shown here. So do not get confused. So for creating any OSGI configuration, you need a service, okay, service class. And in the service class, you cannot take the input. So to take the input, you need an OCD class, okay, and that OCD class is this one. Okay, so there is two Java class, Java file you need. One is OCD class, that is at interface class, you see this one. Second, you need an configuration service class with at component annotation. So I'll again go from here. So we have created something called project config details with at interface. Remember, it is the type is at interface, and whatever the attribute we wanted to accept from the user or from the author or from the developer at the web console or at the OSGI web console, all those attribute you can put it here. So I am currently accepting three input. One is first one is a string, second one is also a string, third one is a boolean field. Okay, and if you see, there are some default value also I am giving. However, in real time, if you do not have the default value, you can take empty, or you do not need to take the default value also. That also is okay. Okay, but it is recommended to have the default value with an empty value. That is much better, so that it will handle gracefully the null pointer exceptions. Okay, so, attribute definition are provided at the attribute level, whatever the attribute you wanted to accept. Once you provide that attribute definition, you can provide a name to that particular attribute. And remember, not only name, we can provide a description as well. I will open that our OSGI configuration so that we can see this. So there are three input we are taking. Okay, so there is something called, okay, I have not changed this. It should be access token. Okay, I have copied the most of the code. That's where I forgot to modify this text. Okay. So what, if you see, right, the name is Google Map API key. Okay. So here it is Google Map API key. The default value I have given some random value, and which is by default it is appearing. Then there is the second name, and if you see the second name and then the third name. Okay, even you can provide a description which appears to be here, the description. Okay, however, these attribute name, these are actual, these, the most important part is these names, and this has to be, this is also visible because these are quite important while accessing the values. Based on these field only, this attribute name only, we will be able to access the values. Okay, so first you have to create this particular at interface class with at object class definition annotation. You can provide the respective name description to your OCD class. Then once you create this, then you have to create an OSGI configuration, which would be a standard at component annotated class, where you can provide the service to the same your component class, or if you have an interface also, you can provide that also, which will be extending to this. I mean, this will be implementing to your interface. That also you can do it. Then once you do that, what we have to do, at a designate, so we have to use at a designate class where we have to provide our OCD. Remember, we have created here OCD in the sense object class definition, this annotation. However, there OCD is an attribute. Okay, at designate OCD is an attribute, and we have to give our at interface class name. Okay, once we give this, then this will act like a OSGI configuration, and it will have the access to this particular uh, configuration at interface to access any value that is entered as part of the OSGI configuration. Now, as part of this, what we have to do, we have to write a method annotated by at activate. Okay, we need to write a method, activate method, and this activate method will provide all the information that is entered in the web console, OSGI web console. If you see, activate method has two parameter. I will show, there are a lot of example you might have seen with one parameter. So this I wanted to show another example with two parameter. And do not get confused, I haven't done anything uh, difference comparing to the generic methods, because I can show you here. So the activate method can have one parameter, something like your config class name. I mean, with whatever your annotated class name you have provided with that, or it can have both the config class name along with an map that will provide all the details as a map key value pair. Okay, so both the way we can implement. Usually you might have came across this example. However, I wanted to show this as an example because lot of project we are using this way to access the key value pair of all the information that we are entering as part of the web console. That's why this is now being used majorly, and it has a very much wider use case to the OSGI configuration part. Okay. Now here what I have done as part of the activate method, I'm using the second variant of the activate method where we are getting the project information detail object and the same detail information as a map as well. Once we get the value, what I'm doing, if you see config, so this is the config object, and I'm trying to access get map API key. What is this one? I will just try to control and click. It will directly take to this one. This means we are trying to get this value, this default value. I mean, currently it will give the default value. Once we change the value in the web console, this value will not be provided. The updated value will be provided. Okay, so I have uh, given here two ways. One is directly accessing one of the attribute of the configuration. Then second way, you can take a map, generic map, okay, all properties, and even I am providing here the local variable is also all properties. So this local variable information, whatever we are getting as a map, we are assigning to our class level variable, and I am writing a method where if I am asking any of the property name, right, I will get the property from this map. Okay, and I will return it as a string. However, because most likely we will get most of the information as a string, so I am doing this. Okay, you can avoid not to do as string, but in that case we have to provide in the return type has to be object or a generic type, so that you can return any type of you wanted to provide a specific return type, so I just put a dot to string to convert everything as a to string and return it. And even I have taken one more example where instead of not using, if you're not using this map part, right, you can get everything. You have to declare all those attributes that you are expecting, like how I have declared for gmap API key. You have to declare for access token, you have to declare for is enable, any attribute that you have taken here. The number of attribute you have to take number of variable here also. Either you have to take the number of variable or you have to manually put into a map so that you can later get it from this particular service class also. So there is two example I have given. One, if you are taking map, how you can directly use the map related attribute, how to get the attribute from the map, and another way how to get each and every attribute that is entered here. Both the case I have shown. Once you create this particular two class, now what we are going to do, I'm currently even logging also. However, I'm not going to show the logging, but what we are going to do, we will try to access this value in a servlet. I'm showing an example. I had already as part of the out of the box, I had a servlet. So I'm trying to include my OSGI configuration here, OSGI service, okay, with using at reference annotation. Once I provide this, what I am trying to do, I am trying to get the value of gmap API key using that get gmap API key, and I'm trying to print that value, and even I'm trying to get the access token from the hash map, whatever the map we have taken, right, from the hash map we are trying to get that value. Okay, but if you see here, right, I'm giving that attribute name gmap access token age like here. okay, as like gmap access token, whatever the syntax of this, right, the spell typo, right, the same has to be provided, because once we pass the string, based on that string, that will be act like a key and it will get the value from the map, okay, from this particular map, all properties map. So the key will be, all of these will be as a key. So this will be one key, this will be gmap api key will be one key, access to gmap access token will be another key, then enable gmap will be another key, and the value will be whatever the value has been provided. So just to get more, give one more example, I can give. So I'll just copy this, I'll paste again. So here, instead of access token, I'll get that is enable value. However, our is enable value, I have to copy this particular gmap, this particular syntax, and I have to pass the same string. Then only I will be able to get it. Otherwise, it'll not going to provide me the information. However, here it is going to return me true or false a string, because I am converting. If you see, right, I am converting all of my map values as a string and I'm returning. In your case, you don't need to do a toString. You can provide a type in for, you just put a generic type or the object, and it will automatically send the boolean value as well. Okay, so let's test whether it works or not. I've already built it to save the time, and if you see, my servlet is written with a page, so I can just hit any page with an extension txt. In my previous video, I have already shown that when we wanted to target, the value will be something like, yeah, I was already trying it. Let me try in a new tab. Okay, let me remove WCM disabled. How does it behave? So if you do not give the WCM disabled, right, there is some junk information also appears as part of this. But if you add the WCM disabled, then the junk part will also go away. Okay. Now, if you see, the gmap API key is coming here and the access token is coming here. Now I have just made the changes here, right? I have not built it. Let's build again. And this time we should get that false or true information also. Okay, build success, and let's reload. Is enabled value is false. Okay, let's make this as true. We'll go to our OSGI service. I think OSGI service here. Here. So let me, oh sorry, let me reload this because we have just done a build. Control F and just need to project OSGI. So this was the name I provided. And whatever the our OSGI configuration name, right? Whatever the class name we have taken, that same class name will be shown. It is not going to show the at interface class. It is going to show the at component annotated class. Okay, I'm just repeating again so that you don't do a mistake or you should not get confused. Okay, now let's enable this, save it. Okay, now we'll go back, we'll see true. Okay, now the false has been changed to true. And even let's change this AKMC23452 to something different. We'll do quickly that change also. Control F, project OSGI configuration, edit, and let's give something called Java Shastra. Okay, save it. Remember, your PID will be your package name with the OSGI configuration path. That will be your PID, and that PID is quite important because that PID identifies the process ID of this OSGI service, and whatever the input will be provided, it will always be identifiable with that particular PID only. Okay, now let me reload. Yeah, if you see now the Java Sastra is appearing here. Okay, So now if we go to the here, I just wanted to give more information. By default there was a different value, but once we updated, right, the updated value is getting appeared in our OSGI. So in this way uh, we can provide the value related to whatever information. Let's assume we are providing a payment gateway in server, and every servers need to have a different payment gateway. So we can go to every server and we can edit this value of that server OSGI console, and based on that, that particular information only will be picked in that particular server. Even though you might have two dev server, dev 1, dev 2, and you might want to change the, you wanted to continue with different value in two server, that also you can do using this particular OSGI configuration service feature. Okay. And so there is three way we can provide the configuration information. One, if you see, by default we are providing a default value here. Okay, that is first way. Second way, we can provide that value at the OSGI console. That's what we have just seen. So here you can go to the OSGI configuration manager, you can edit it and save it, and this configuration will be picked up. Once we save this configuration, these actually getting saved as a .config file, and that we can go here. Let's I'm hoping, let's reload, we'll be able to get it. Apps, system, config. If you see, we have created project configuration.cfg.json. Okay, and here let me download this file. Open with notepad. Okay, if you see, this is the configuration file that is getting saved as part of our this. Okay, so this is the way you can identify this config JSON. And what you can do, you can copy this config. So I can copy this particular node and I can put as part of my weekend guide also, as part of the OSGI config. I can put it here. I can just copy this node and I can put here. This means this will be, now this particular configuration will be picked up whenever our server is restarted. We don't need to go ahead and change in the every server. Rather than, we can have the configuration at our code level. But remember, it's not only this JSON, you must have the configuration related Java files. Along with that, you have to provide this .json file, cfg.json file. If you provide it, automatically this configuration will be picked up. So with this, what you can do, what is the advantage of this file? So you can have a generic file under config for all the server, all the environment, or you can have author, publish, dev, stage, prod, all those specific configuration at the code level. Automatically it will be picked up. There is one bonus point I wanted to mention. If you wanted to have a configuration file for your local SDK or local instance, that also you can have. The config path will be config.sdk. The way we usually create config.author, config.publish, and similarly we create config.dev, config.stage, config.prod. Similarly, you can create something called config.sdk. Inside that, whatever the configuration you are going to put, the same configuration will be picked up in the local. It is not going to picked up in the your higher environment, that is dev, stage, or prod. Whatever the concept today we discussed, this is applicable for both uh, standalone and cloud service. However, in case of standalone, there are multiple run modes are allowed, but in case of cloud only, there are certain specific set of run mode are only allowed. Based on that, the configuration can be set it here. However, for the local SD, I mean standalone server, You can give any standalone customized run mode also. So that is something you may have to uh, consider as part of your configuration while working with the OSGI configuration. But overall, the concept of the OSGI configuration Java classes, it is same, and even the files will be saved always at the system level if you are saving from the OSGI web console. But if you are putting those files manually at your code level at this config level, then this particular file will be picked up by your respective environment. For local SDK, it will be config.sdk. For your higher environment, it will be config.dev, config.stage, config.prod. Okay, similarly, you can even provide for config.author, config.publish as well. Uh, there is one more I wanted to uh, cover, that is related to the simple schedule task. In case you get confused anytime related to these two classes that I have shown, there are some instances you can create both classes in within one class, and that example is already comes out of the box. Whenever you deploy your first project, it will create a simple schedule task, and as part of this, right, there is a simple class. However, as part of this class itself, they have created the internal class, or internal this at interface annotated class they have created. That's where we don't need to provide all the values as a public. In my case, I had to provide sorry even here we don't need it to be public because it is part of the internal class, this particular class. And as part of this, right, so first of first set of the class is declared within our OSGI service class itself, so we don't need to create another class. This you can always refer. Even I recommend doing this approach where you don't need to maintain two different classes, and whenever you wanted to make any changes to here, right, you always need to uh, kind of debug and some kind of refer to this particular information, then you go to this particular class and make the changes. If you wanted to add one more attribute, right, you have to reach to this class. However, this class is no longer nowhere referred. Okay, it's kind of you have to keep chaining it to find out this class, rather than you can follow this particular structure where whenever you goes to your OSGI service class, automatically you will see your at interface annotated class, and this particular class you can just keep making the change at one place for this and even this. Okay, one more thing you can include as part of the way we have created at activate method, annotated method. You might have to create at deactivate method also, in case you wanted to any deactivation scenario as well, in case you wanted to cover. You can refer to this particular documentation. This is the OSGI documentation. There are a lot of information provided here, but this is specifically I will attach this particular URL where you can directly goes to the component property types, and it has provided both the example of activate method, and you can refer any of the deactivate method, all other details also as part of this documentation. I'm hoping this is quite clear related to the OSGI configuration, how to create an OSGI configuration, how to create an OCD class, how to use an OSGI configuration, even how to uh, provide a configuration at the code level. Before ending this, let me show you the OSGI configuration file also. So our configuration, whatever I have shown, is part of this particular folder, this OSGI config. These will be part of UI.config. If we open this SRC, so there is something called config. So whatever we have here, right, the same thing you can put it here. I will just import it from AEM server so that I can show you the same. Okay. Remember earlier? Okay. We did not get this. Okay. We got it. We got it. This was a junk folder that came. We'll delete. We don't need it. Okay. If I open this, right, enable Gmap property equal to true, Gmap API key is equal to Java source. Okay. and you can remove this. This is just a lint based error. You can keep it or you remove it. It is okay. It is work. It's going to work. And the same configuration you can copy paste based on your config path. For local SDK, I wanted to very specific. We can create something called config.sdk, and that will be here. New folder, config.sdk. Under that, whatever the configuration we are going to put, for example, I'm going to put this under SDK, and the value will be something like local. Okay, now let me push this. Okay, successfully done. Let's check whether, if you see, Gmap API is now local. It is coming from our local, even though we do have our this Javasastra file config, it is still taking from SDK only. That's because our config.sdk are related to the run mode related to our local SDK jar. And remember, this .sdk will work only for Cloud SDK. For your local standalone jar, if you're working on the standalone server, you have to check your run mode. Based on run mode, you have to create a folder called config dot your local standalone jar. Most likely the name can be config.local, so you can use accordingly. With this, we are coming to the end of this video. In case you need any details or any more information related to any of the specific topic, please provide your comment at the comment section. I'll reply if most likely I always go through all of the comments and I'll reply to the comment if required. Any feedback also appreciated. If there is anything I have missed as part of the video, I'll try to improve the video in my future video. Thank you.